In the Newsroom is a production in partnership with Studio Stillwater. Every week, journalists from the Stillwater News Press invite listeners to join us in the newsroom and hear the story behind the stories. Welcome to In the Newsroom. I'm Beau Simmons, editor of the Stillwater News Press. Today, I'm joined by city editor Michelle Charles.
Hello.
Oh, there she is. And
delayed response.
coming back for the second week, publisher Kevin Shields.
Hello.
How you doing, Kevin?
Doing good.
Got to see, I think, maybe, you probably picked up on it, sort of a story being formed, right? Because we were at editorial board, we were talking about the governor's end to the unemployment bonuses, but creating the one-time bonus for people getting back to work. We discussed that a little bit. And then I think you said something along the lines like you wouldn't want to editorialize about something that we hadn't ourselves covered.
Indeed.
And then we got to a chamber meeting, met some of the folks at the Chamber of Commerce the first time, and Justin Mingus started talking about just the reduction in labor, mainly for restaurants, right? And then so
restaurants and retail.
Yeah, retail. Yeah. I mean, all over the place.
Yes, big labor shortage right now.
And then Michelle had seen just different posts, right, about help wanted here and there, and it's like, it's. But you're finding it isn't just Stillwater, it is national, but we are. I don't know. Are we uniquely impacted? Is it much different here? What do you think?
I don't think we're uniquely impacted. I think it's across the board, and actually, in from the research I was doing, the kind of white tablecloth restaurants are even hurting in some of the major cities. And some of the people who worked there there were people who made pretty good livings as servers in some of these restaurants. But during the shutdown, people had to determine, do I still feel safe, face to face with the public? Am I going to get enough tips, frankly, because people rely on tips to make that good living? And if the restaurant's open limited hours or, your customer base is not quite all the way back or you've got limited capacity, okay, so now you're showing up for work and you're not making nearly as much as you would have normally. Here in Stillwater, we have a lot of, we still have a lot of people who depend on tips for sure. From delivery drivers who have probably made bank,
right?
Over this whole period of time, to to the servers at the sit-down type restaurants, to the people at the coffee shop. We have plenty of people in service type jobs, whether it's retail or restaurant, and they kind of get lumped together when you're talking about economic development. They're all kind of categorized the same way. We're finding that, I had seen a lot of posts of, some of the kind of standard, it's like, oh, nobody wants to work. I'm seeing all these help wanted signs. Nobody wants to work. We need to get rid of the extra unemployment so these people, get off their behinds. I've seen posts like that. And then I've also seen, posts where, the actual restaurants themselves, like Shortcake's Diner, which is a Stillwater institution for anyone who's not aware of it. Many a college student has wandered in there drunk at 3 a.m. to try to sop up the alcohol with some, kind of greasy spoon type food, and people love it. There are people who went to college here who come back and eat at Shortcake's just so, just for the nostalgia factor. They just last year, I believe, or year before, they cut back their hours. They're no longer open overnight. Yeah. Now they were open just till 9 p.m. They've had to shut down in the afternoons. They're only open for breakfast and lunch. They've been closing at 2 p.m. Right? Because they don't have enough staffing to be open for their full abbreviated schedule.
Right. And what was it? Some of the stuff you were reading, Kevin, you were talking about fast food joints, though, actually sort of booming, right?
Certain ones are. Yeah. When you look at every recession type event you ever have, if you go back historically and look, there's a company that seizes on coming out of it. Or they seized going into it, seized the opportunity. The biggest shock to me was a certain place known for selling chicken sandwiches, shall we say.
Okay.
Their 2019 numbers were the best in the history of the company. And me being from Georgia, most people should be able to figure out where I'm talking about.
Okay.
2020, heart of the pandemic, they destroyed 2019 numbers. Had the best year they've ever had. So who's going to be the next to seize upon that, offer a little higher wage to get a little higher people? But it's not just, it's one of the things causing gas prices, for example, is something we've ignored for a long time, is the trucker problem. And the fact is the pandemic made it where trucking schools were no longer open. So they didn't have that pipeline coming in. And a lot of the older guys who were over-the-road fuel said, you know what, this hazmat stuff's too much. It's too hard to get. I'm not going to do it. Or they took a regional job where, you've heard the commercials. You can be home every weekend.
Right.
Or took a local job just hauling from the, Amazon facility or the Old Dominion facility out to the individual customers, and they're home every night. So that's really kind of what drove our gas prices up to a certain plateau. Now, certain other things helped buoy it, but we didn't seem to get hit by the panic of the colonial surge buying.
No, it wasn't regional for us. I mean, that was
the funny part is that gas pipeline goes up to New England or whatever.
Right.
Yet Georgia and North Carolina were where everybody bought out all the gas stations. So
yeah, it's just what you see on the national news, and then people kind of internalize it, I think. With this employment situation, I did go around and talk to, I talked to Hideaway Pizza, another Stillwater institution, and Hideaway stays staffed up. I mean, jobs at Hideaway there's a lot of competition for them. People actually write essays when they apply for the job, and they say, my parents worked at Hideaway when they were in college. I'm a legacy. So they actually do have this sort of thing.
Oh, wow.
Cover letter application is
yes, it's like highly
that's
coveted. It's the collegial atmosphere. It's the fact that they get paid minimum wage plus a tip share. Everyone shares the tips equally. And the fact that Hideaway has a cabin out at Lake Carl Blackwell that their staff can use. So there are all kinds of reasons.
Might have led with that part first.
There are all kinds of reasons people love to work at Hideaway. Having said that, Hideaway had to shut down part of its dining room because it didn't have enough staff.
Right, and the demand is there.
It is.
They just can't supply it
because
of labor. Yeah.
So talking to the floor manager, he said they had to just get really aggressive with their recruitment in a way that they don't always have to. And they were able to add about 10 servers, and they're getting trained. They're not quite online yet. So they still have a sign up that says, please be patient. Thank you for your patience. We're a little short-staffed. And, you go in there and maybe all the tables aren't being seated. And, people get frustrated when they go to a restaurant and they see empty tables and they have to wait in line. And they don't realize that if you only have 2 servers to take care of the entire restaurant, it doesn't do you any good to sit down.
You're still going to be waiting.
Exactly.
We got a really, I thought, interesting take on the extra unemployment or whatever at the editorial board meeting. The waitress. Remember, we asked, one of the people asked, how do you feel about this? She's just bartender/server. Right. And she gave me an answer. It didn't surprise me so much what side she fell on, although I think it would shock some people because she was all about getting rid of it.
Okay.
But it was how passionate she was about saying it should go away.
Okay, and what was the reasoning?
Because they can't hire anybody. It's one of those type of things.
It's time to get back to work.
Yes, it's time to get back to work.
Right,
well,
yeah.
I think it's overwhelming for her. And probably, the last time we were there, too, it was like 1 or 2 people tops working it. So,
I'm sure the people who've been working all along are pretty sick of it. I'm sure they are. They are tired of picking up extra shifts.
Especially if you have
They're tired of doing it all.
In a quasi-management kind of role.
Oh, yeah.
And something else Justin mentioned, he said, as far as Stillwater 2020 went, he thought a lot of the businesses who were able to take advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program, different things, different grants, that he thinks a lot of people handled it really well, in Stillwater from the financial aspect. So, yeah.
It seems like we we weren't hit quite as hard, but I mean, there were still things that slowed down. And I mean, as far as the unemployment situation, one thing that I always go back to is that, the cost of paying for childcare, the cost of just living your life when you're on the lower end of the pay scale, things eat up so much of your paycheck. And I had a conversation with someone about this. Think about it. they were like, well, they need to get rid of unemployment because, these people are making more on unemployment than they do in their jobs. And I'm like, well, is that a great pay scale then? Are we admitting then that we have an economic system that depends on having people who are so broke and so desperate that they will work for less than living wages, and we need to keep them that way so that we can all get our burgers and fries?
That's a bigger converson, right?
It is.
And, or even social safety nets, like you talk about.
Yeah.
One medical bill could bankrupt, half the country probably, depending on what that medical bill is.
I think way more than half the country.
Oh, yeah.
Way more.
If you look at the percentage of people who don't even have $500 in their savings account in our country, it's huge. It's huge. There are a lot of people with solid middle class jobs who are maybe one or two paychecks away from just complete financial disaster.
Well, like you just said, though, middle class jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That to me pertains that it's not what the pay is. It's how we live our lives as Americans as a whole, really. Because the unemployment thing is everywhere. As I drove over here through 5 states, I'd never seen massive amounts of billboards saying call today, start at $50,000.
Right.
There were TV commercials in different places I stopped. They were like, come work here for X amount of money. Everybody seemingly across the country is desperate to get staff. In part, who knows why exactly? I mean, I think it's probably a very multifaceted, tiered reasoning.
I would agree.
But, people, we're Americans. We're 2 credit cards in the hole, all the way maxed out, nothing in savings. But, boy, we got every channel on TV and a car that we can't afford.
But, I will say this. I've worked in nonprofits and things like that. And a lot of times when people are dealing with the folks who get assistance, right, who need the help, they'll say, well, we're going to help you figure this out. And what it is it's a program on how to budget your money better. And but here's the deal. I mean, to me, it's like if you don't make enough money to pay for a 2-bedroom apartment without spending 60% of your take home and have money left over to buy stuff for your kids and feed them and pay for daycare and do all the other things you need to do just to be able to work, is it a budget problem? Is it really because can you budget your way out of poverty? I think that's another larger discussion to have. So, I mean, and going back to and trying to carry this back to the, the labor shortage, we're finding that some of the places are now finally, the market pressure is increasing wages for some of these service jobs. And so people who have said, let the market take care of it, guess what? The market's taking care of it now. It took something, and sometimes the market has to kind of wallop you upside the head with a 2x4 to make it happen because wages have been stalled out for a really long time. But I think the market is working at this point. Wages are going to go up a little bit.
Well, someone's going to come in and pay, and there's one big box retailer that shall remain nameless. It's paying starting wage for just an hourly associate. It's like $15.50, something like that. Shift supervisor who'd normally make like $22,000 a year is making $32,000 a year. And they're going to try and corner the market with all the best people.
Sure.
And then be the one who comes out of this with going, can you believe their customer service? Can you believe this? Yeah, they hired to it.
Right.
They saw an opportunity. I hate to relate it to the old thing of what Honda and Toyota saw Ford doing and said, we can do that better in the early 80s. And flipped the car market on its ear.
I barely remember the early 80s. What about you guys?
I do remember them very well, and my hair was awesome, by the way. I used so much spritz. It was amazing.
Well, it's another one of our
I wasn't
meetings.
that old to be using that. Although I did have a lot of gel. That was the guy thing to just
was your
go
hair
nuts.
crunchy?
Oh, I was like Pat Riley in the early 80s, just
Anyway.
the mobster look.
That's usually how my brain works, but because I have Michelle here, and I was going to ask her a little bit. Yeah, I remember what it was. It was a conversation that we'd also had with Ashland about sometimes you go into interviews maybe not knowing everything about your subject, or, you're not an expert on the thing that they do.
Right.
But sometimes that doesn't make for a terrible interview, right?
No.
Because, I think it can even add a little exposition to your writing, once you ask questions that someone else would. I mean, but how do you approach interviews usually? What's your interview style?
Well, first of all, I'm a big old nerd, so I obsessively research. I do. Yeah. Yes, Kevin, I know it's shocking. I mean, it's kind of funny because I have to, or I just kind of feel freaked out. Now, having said that, I don't understand everything that this person does. I mean, most of the time I don't. And I honestly think the coolest thing about this job that we do is that we get paid to learn about new things every day. Every day I go home and I know something that I didn't know when I came to work. And I think that is pretty freaking awesome.
So how many questions are you, prepared with? How many do you go into knowing exactly what you want to ask?
I have a weird process. I mean, when Chris and I first started doing our other podcast, he kind of teased me because when we sat down to do the interview, I very quickly grabbed a notepad and scribbled down like 5 questions for the person. And those were going to be like the touchstones those were the big points that we knew we wanted to hit. And then we were going to work from there, right? But, what he didn't realize was that I'd been obsessing about those questions for 3 weeks. The night before, I had, taken a long bath and thought about nothing but them, and then laid in bed and thought about them before I went to sleep. So by the time I, noted them down, I knew exactly what I was going to do. So I usually have, I guess that's my long way of saying, I usually have a couple of major points that I know I want to hit, or a couple of major topics I know I want to hit. And then I'm pretty flexible to follow where the conversation goes, depending on what the person says within that. And that's kind of how I approach it. So I know I hit the big important stuff, but I can get who that person is and what they have to say. I don't want to shove them into like a little box of what I think this interview is supposed to be.
Right. If you're trying to know something specific, for a story,
sure,
then you have to.
That's different.
Yeah, you have to hit, whatever those questions are. But
yeah, it's like, okay, but what about last September?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I kind of, I approach it, I think, a lot the same way. Is just, I barely have questions written down. I don't think I'm winging it.
No,
I think
it's like mentally you're prepared.
Yeah, more like a conversation. And if it gets off track, I try to steer it back. So
exactly.
We kind of interviewed Kevin last time. What did it seem like we knew what we were doing last week?
Outside of the vendetta you had against the Northeast,
okay. Right.
Everything was good. I didn't feel like it was winging it.
Well, that's another part of my style is if you guys break off onto these tangents, I got to rein you back in.
He does.
Yeah.
He spends a lot of time doing that. Yeah, he's just like, guys, don't make me pull this car over. That's just kind of Beau's vibe.
Oh, what else has been going on? What kind of?
Oh, well, do you want to talk about the sauce shortage?
I don't have a sauce shortage story. What I had was a column. I can say, we were finalizing Style magazine. What I had was a food recipe column, and I thought I try to give them more than they'll need. That's the idea, because we farm out the actual production work. We do all the photography and writing, but we have someone who designs it for us. So I try to send them more than they need, and I prioritize things. I say this story is most important, this story is least important. I put myself on the bottom because I was
but
trying
it's the
to.
great sauce shortage.
Yeah, it is. But it wasn't a story about the sauce shortage.
It was not. It was in response to.
It was a food column on how to make your own sauces.
Yes.
Yeah, in case we wake up 3 months from now in the ketchupocalypse and we don't know what we're doing with our tomatoes. Do we have tomatoes? Do we have vinegar? We'll figure it out.
We're going to have to.
That could be a good thing, though, because if mayonnaise disappeared...
I would not cry.
No, I wouldn't cry either. But I thought the sauce maybe I've been out of the loop on the sauce shortage that is, because I only knew of one restaurant that was struggling.
It's not a food shortage, it's a package shortage.
Yes.
That because takeout demand was so high, as we mentioned earlier, there was so many people doing takeout rather than dine in, all those little individual package things.
And this was all based on a tweet by our governor, actually.
Oh yeah,
Well, it does make
I forgot
more
about that.
It was
Yeah.
citing.
It makes more sense to me now because every time I order a sandwich and go yellow mustard, I get honey mustard.
Ah.
It's the most infuriating thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, honey mustard is pretty popular around here, I have to say.
I have an entire.
Not with you, I know, but, just in general. But, yeah, but there was a tweet by the governor basically saying people need to get back to work because we're running out of Chick-fil-A sauce. Is what he said.
It is
just
tasty.
To be honest.
I'll say that one. It is tasty. But
And so Beau was inspired then to do this thing. It's like, okay, well, if you run low on sauces, here's how you can make your own.
you never know when inspiration will hit.
Yeah,
You
it's true.
don't. You don't.
That's very true.
Well, isn't most of the people's sauce though? Isn't most of the chain restaurants? Isn't it basically Thousand Island without pickles?
I think they're
their
different.
dressings. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
kind
some
of like
that.
ketchup, mustard, and
Yeah,
mixed
but-
together, and that's kind of it.
It's some kind of thing.
I mean,
don't
now
know.
they may have the magic, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of cinnamon per 500 gallons. but-
Right. There's a burger and custard place over by Stillwater High School, and when my youngest daughter was in high school, she was obsessed with their fry sauce. And it's one of those kind of mayonnaise-y based sauces, and she could just sit there and guzzle it. I mean, I think she ordered the fries just so she could eat the sauce. Honestly, the fries were simply a vehicle for just tons and tons of
No
this
one
sauce.
should put mayonnaise on fries.
Talk to the Belgians.
No.
Oh, now we're gonna go after Belgium. I see how we play.
Now
it.
we've left Vermont, gone after the
We
wonderful
have,
folks
yeah.
overseas.
Now, one thing cool about the magazine, I do want to talk about my story, my interview with Cold Brew, because I think this was super cool. This is, again, an example of me learning about things that I did not know before. If you would have asked me a couple months ago even what lo-fi hip-hop was, I would not have been able to tell you. And I probably can't even adequately explain it right now, like define
Well,
it.
I
but
think first you should say that cold brew is a person.
Cold Brew is
Yes.
a person. Cold Brew is a Stillwater kid. Grew up in Stillwater. Went to Stillwater High School. Went to UCO. His name is Austin Moffitt, and he started out as this cute little guy wearing a little fedora, playing the ukulele, doing kind of rootsy Americana music, singer-songwriter stuff. He was playing around with making these beats, like just for fun, in his spare time, just doing this. He was putting out these other albums. I mean, he was financing his own albums when he was in like junior high. I mean, this guy is like, he loves music. This is all he's ever done, all he's ever wanted to be. Well, he went to college. He was in the professional music program at the University of Central Oklahoma. And he discovered that there were other people who were into these sort of lo-fi beats. And there's this whole big scene around it, and people use it to relax. I found out that one of my daughters is way into it, listens to it for hours a day. I did not know this until I started talking to her about it. Anyway, so he kind of reinvented himself. He records under the name Cold Brew, and it's all lowercase, all run together. He likes the aesthetics of it and the way the letters all line up and everything. Plus, it's got the idea of like a coffee house-ish kind of vibe, and it's sort of chill. And there were a lot of reasons.
Is it coffee
he chose
house music? I don't spend a lot of time in coffee houses, so is it?
I don't know if it's
or is
really.
that's too pigeonholy.
You work in the news. You should live in a coffee house.
No, I don't think it is so much, but I always think of coffee house music as more acoustic and folky, but maybe not. Maybe not anymore. Maybe it is all lo-fi hip-hop now. I don't know.
Is there somebody kind of mainstream-esque that people listening could go, okay, that's what it is? Because
that's who it
when
sounds
y'all tried to
like.
define it to
Yeah.
me, I still can't wrap my head around what it sounds like.
We'll tell you what, we're going to have Chris edit a little snippet of some cold brew into this. Actually,
Still not going to help me.
It will when you listen to the podcast. Then you're going to be like, oh, that. Okay. But so what he does now is he lays down the beats, and he's starting to collaborate with vocalists. And it's really a cool thing, though. I mean, he's got millions of listeners on like Spotify and Apple. And what happens now is it's not like, you're selling out stadiums necessarily, or you're selling CDs or whatever. I mean, this is like downloads, this is streams, right? And so you get on one of these curated playlists, and this is what he is. Lo-fi hip-hop, okay, I'm going to say this. It's like a little bit of a jazzy influenced kind of mellow hip-hop. It's real rhythmic. and electronic with the beats, but it's got a little bit of a soothing, jazzy vibe to it. That's how I would describe it.
So it's kind of like getting play in a big radio market.
It is.
It's something that already has an audience.
And once you get on a list, then people know who you are, and then you get on more lists, and then you get streamed a lot, and you get paid by the stream. That's how it works when you're on these platforms. So,
see, I likened it to when Michelle was telling me about some of the stuff he wanted to do. I likened it to the Gorillas, like.
Yeah.
And not the, but that's not, no, that's not the sound he goes after.
It's not.
That's not the sound he goes after, but really the Gorillas is a collection of people who work, with one artist and.
Y'all are making me feel more and more like my kids make me feel.
Or if you think of a DJ like say like Calvin Harris or Mark Ronson or someone like that, where they do the arrangement and then you've got other people doing the lead vocals in front of it. Okay, Quincy Jones back in the day.
Quincy
Jones.
Thank you.
It would be a Quincy Jones song, but Quincy Jones would be the producer of it. He would be the one who did the arrangement. He would not really necessarily. He might play some piano or something, but he wouldn't be the lead vocalist. You wouldn't hear it and go, that's a Quincy Jones song, but it was released under his name. And that's kind of how Cold Brew is doing these collaborations. We actually really enjoyed one called Simple that's been out for a while. There's this really cool animated video that just came out that is the official video for it. He's got a new album called Late Night Drive, and it's supposed to be an experience. It's supposed to give you the feeling of what it would be like if you're just out late at night driving around.
Yeah, the video is criminally underviewed right now on YouTube.
And it's so cool, right?
I can't believe how good it is. I mean, honestly.
So we're hoping that this will be...
And that's why, I don't know if you saw the style cover, that I can't wait to preview it because it's trippy as all get out.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest cover we've ever done.
It was so funny.
I'm so excited for people to see it.
Well, in poor Austin, okay, I did a story about him when he was in high school. And I was like, I think this is probably going to be the cover. And he was really excited. And then the Transformers were kind of a big deal at the time. And our publisher at the time really was in love with the Transformers. And he wanted the Transformers on the cover. And so, so Optimus Prime was the cover instead of Austin Moffat, and he was really sad. And so this time I'm like, oh yeah, you're going to be the cover, and then it's like, oh, but it's going to be this little like sock puppet version.
So that begs the question, because I had it when I saw it. Is there a story behind I guess it's technically like a yarn doll.
It's like a yarn doll.
Yeah, so
I think
is there a story behind it?
No, that's that animator
that's
style. If you're telling me like, does it have deeper meaning,
right?
Like, did he animate it that way because of something going on with the music? No idea.
Yeah. See, I couldn't tell it was animated. I was just like, well, we have crafts in here, so I guess this is a craft.
Yeah,
it's just a really cool style of animation. Yeah. Anyway, it's a very cool video, and the aesthetic is super cool, and we're very excited about the cover. And it is actually supposed to be a picture of Austin, and you can recognize it because of the beanie that he wears as Cold Brew. That's kind of his signature thing. But and we've got another photo later on that shows like a different animated version of him, and then with the little yarn doll version of him to kind of let you know who it is and what that is. But people should definitely check out the video. Yeah. Check out Cold Brew. And you can find him on YouTube and all over the place. It's pretty cool. And he's a local guy.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up here and just say, check out the magazine. It's a good piece. It's one of our weirder magazines we've had. So
I'm excited about it. Oh, and boozy popsicles. Yeah. I worked hard on those, y'all.
Some kind of drunken slushy thing that Michelle did.
They're actually popsicles. They're not slushy.
I was about to say, she's got this great way of boozy popsicles. And you're like, some slushy, even alcoholic.
Even the savory frozen Bloody Mary.
I did a Bloody Mary. It was the bomb. It was so good.
So get that recipe
in
Style Magazine. And we're going to call it a day right here. Thank you for joining us in the newsroom. Thank you for joining us in the newsroom. Look for Studio Stillwater wherever you find your podcasts. Find archived episodes on stwnewspress.com.